Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am making this video because here in Iowa anyway, it's very, very cold. December weather, like typical Iowa. So, I mean, this time of year, a lot of people really need to save their hay, save anything they can, and really they feed out everything that they have. So, I felt like making this video because I want people who may not be fully educated to know what they're feeding their horse and make sure that they're safe when they're feeding their horse. If you guys are anything like me, when I got my horses, I did not know like crap. I just did not know anything. Got them as a Christmas present when I was really young. So I just had to learn and research and grow by myself. And I come from a very non-horsey family. So to be completely honest with you guys, I do not know how my horses are not dead. Like, I have no idea how they're not dead. Like, they should have been dead a long time ago. When I was younger, when we first got our horses, we lived on a small acreage, like, I think it was 8 acres. And the horses had like a little 1.5 like acre dry lot, pretty much, because that's all they had, so that it was just like a dry lot. And we baled our own hay. We had like 5 acres of hay ground, and we baled our own hay. It was our first, acreage, so we weren't perfect at like baling hay. So a lot of our hay ended up molding. Now, mold can happen like several different ways. If your hay is stored somewhere very moist, that's not dry, and if there's water leaking on it or anything like that, your hay can mold. Or what usually happens for us is when you cut the hay, before baling it, you cut the hay and you let it dry in the sun for several days. Now, this is what is very hard about hay farming, is that you don't want your hay to get rained on ever, because that just means you have to let it dry even more, or sometimes it's just ruined. And so it either usually got rained on, or we didn't let it dry out in the sun long enough, so when the hay was baled, it still retained some moisture. So usually when that happens, the hay bales will start to get very hot because the moisture's contained in the hay bale and it starts to get really warm and moist. So if you see that your hay is steaming, or it's very hot and warm, then that might be a sign that, like, hey, I should probably feed this now before it starts to mold. You will know kind of when your hay is molding, because mold, it's pretty obvious. It's just mold. Like, when you open the hay bales, if you see white powdery stuff like on the hay, that is mold. Definitely mold. Or if you set your hay right on the ground, that like almost always molds if your hay is right on the ground. Our hay barn has a built-in floor, so the floor provides air circulation underneath the hay so it doesn't end up molding. Otherwise, just set it on hay pallets, because it almost always molds on the ground from the moisture in the ground, and it'll get like brown and white and just nasty mold on the underside of it. So always keep your hay off of the ground. And yeah, you'll just really know when it starts to mold. And when you break open the bales, a lot of dust and stuff like flies up, and you really know when it's molding, and you do not want to feed it to your horse. Now, mold and dust sometimes do get confused, because we definitely have dusty bales, and dust usually is brown in color, and it does smell a little bit. But if you look through your bale very thoroughly, you don't see any white powder anywhere, then usually it's just dust and you can feed it to your horse. But if you see the white powder and the white dust flying up, definitely don't feed it. When I was younger, like I said, I didn't really know anything about, the horses and what they needed. And like I said, a lot of our hay molded. We fed so much moldy hay to our horses. Like, we'd have a solid mold bale, and we would just feed it to the horses because that's all we had, and they didn't have pasture to be on. Literally, I don't know how they aren't dead. Mold, especially in the wintertime, can cause really bad colic. And obviously it's different for every horse, but the thing that always bothered me was that I was doing this research, and my dad recently got remarried. And you know, my stepmom, she doesn't know anything about horses. Like, not a horse girl, not her thing. Like, doesn't really know horses at all. And she was always getting, you know, angry that I didn't want to feed the moldy bales to the horses and I was just going to feed them to the cattle. And the thing she told me was, if a cow can eat it, a horse can eat it too. Ah, the words of uneducated. So, in case you guys haven't taken an animal science class or a vet class, cattle and horses are two very different types of animals. Cattle are what's called ruminant animals. Ruminant animals are animals that have 4 stomachs or multiple stomachs. They are cud chewing animals. So cattle have 4 stomachs, as I'm sure a lot of you know, and when they eat food, it will travel through all their stomachs, or it is processed a lot throughout their digestive system. Horses are equine animals, non-ruminant animals. They have 1 stomach. 1 stomach that processes their food very differently. If you look at horse poop, you can see that horse poop, you can see like the little grains and little like strips of grass and hay and roughage that don't get digested down so much, rather than like cattle. Cattle poop is literal slop. It is disgusting. It's like diarrhea. Horse poop is very hard, very firm, I guess. When you look at it, you can see the grass that they've chewed up and digested. So cattle, if you feed them mold, most of the time they don't really get sick because the mold is processed so much throughout their stomach and is able to be pulled out and whatever. Horses only have 1 stomach and they do not digest that much, so it is so much easier for them to get really sick because of the mold rather than cattle, who can basically eat freaking anything and not get sick. Same with goats and sheep. Like, we all know how goats eat literally anything in sight because it is possible for them. It does. So if you have anyone in your life telling you that, then tell them to go do some research and stop making assumptions, because it's definitely not true that horses can eat a lot of molds like cattle can. So every horse is different. Obviously, my horses maybe have built themselves up a little bit to mold because we fed them so much mold growing up. I swear, I don't know how they aren't dead, because I've seen horses all the time that get sick from mold. And mold colic sucks. It's definitely not something you want to deal with. And colic can be a difficult thing. Your horse can literally drop dead from colic. And that's one of those things you have to get the vet out right away, and if you don't catch it in time, your horse can literally die. So yeah, I don't know how my horses aren't dead. But if your horse is on pasture and you're also giving them hay, like throwing them hay here and there, if they have pasture, sorry, something floating in my face. If your horse has pasture and you're feeding them hay, if your hay has a little mold in it, probably not the end of the world, because your horse has the option to pick around it and go off and eat grass. Most horses would prefer to go off and eat grass rather than eat a moldy piece of hay. So most horses will pick around it. I can't speak for your horse, my horses do. But if your horse is in a dry lot such as mine were, and hay is the only thing they're getting, they're going to eat the moldy hay. Like, they're going to eat everything in sight. So if you find any mold in your hay, just take the safe route and toss it, feed it to cattle or something. I hate to waste things, so I always just feed it to the cattle because they eat it anyway. And just try and stray away from it. That's really all I can say. I can't speak for your horse, obviously, because if your horse has never seen mold in its life, it could get very sick from it if something happens to get in it. So this time of year, if you're feeding hay to your horses, it's very dry out. Your horse's digestive system is probably dry. And if you get mold in your hay, then you'll probably have a higher chance of getting colic, especially impaction colic and stuff like that. So check your hay, especially if you have a place where it's very snowy or your horses don't get grass in the wintertime. Check your hay, make sure it's not moldy. And yeah, so I hopefully this video was informational for you guys. I know I needed a video like this when I was younger, so if you're just getting into horses or you don't know a lot about horses, definitely stray away from moldy hay. Growing up, whenever I told people like we gave our horses some moldy hay, people would be like, "You're giving your horses moldy hay?" And I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "Don't do that. You could literally kill your horse," and you literally can. I'm saying literally like every other word, and I'm sorry. But yeah, just stray away from it as much as possible. I wish you all the best in this winter season. I hope you all are having a good holiday season. I don't know if you can tell, I have my little horsey Christmas tree up back there. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this helped you guys, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!